Enough! You are all of you beneath me. I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
Puny god.
Grandiosity. Despite being shallow and superficial, psychopaths show no self-esteem issues. Psychopaths live in a falsely constructed worldview in which they are both literally and figuratively God. Often seen as megalomaniacs, they also have an equally overblown sense of entitlement. Irresponsibility. Psychopaths are irresponsible because nothing is ever their fault. Someone else, or the world at large, is always to blame for all of their problems. This makes sense if you understand that psychopaths think themselves perfect. Nothing wrong can ever originate with them, and so logic, the psychopath's logic, dictates that everything bad is always someone else's fault. Impulsive behavior. The psychopath's impulsive behavior makes sense in light of their megalomania. In their world, whatever they want now is good, and whatever they do not want is bad. If a psychopath wants sex and his date will not provide it, then rape is good and the date is bad. If someone has money in his or her pocket and the psychopath wants it, then robbery is good and the victim is bad for possessing something the psychopath wanted. If this strikes the reader as insane, it is. One of the earliest writers on the subject of psychopathy, J.C. Pritchard, coined the now-defunct term moral insanity as a way to describe psychopathy in 1835. Compulsive lying. Living at the expense of the rest of humanity would be an impossible situation in a rational society. Psychopaths have solved this dilemma through their premier weapon, lies. Lies hold together their view of themselves, their own private universe, and facilitate their need to live parasitically off the rest of society. Without empathy, shame, and remorse, they are free to lie as often and as outrageously as they please. Normal people would blush or sweat or tremble if they dared stretch the truth to the same degree. However, for the psychopath, lying is as easy and natural as breathing. This is why they often pass polygraphs. They do not register the physiological reactions that non-psychopaths would when lying. They are so good at lying they can fool trained psychiatrists and even other psychopaths. What is important to know is that given the right circumstances, they can fool anyone.
And I am reminded on this holy day of the sad story of Kitty Genovese. As you all may remember, a long time ago, almost 30 years ago, this poor soul cried out for help time and time again, but no person answered her calls. Though many saw, no one so much as called the police. They all just watched as Kitty was being stabbed to death in broad daylight. They watched as her assailant walked away. Now, we must all fear evil men. But there is another kind of evil which we must fear most, and that is the indifference of good men.
We can describe a psychopath or psychopathy as a clinical construct characterized by a cluster of characteristics and features. And the cluster would include interpersonal characteristics, how we deal with other people, how the individual interacts with somebody else, affective characteristics, feelings, emotions, and other behaviors, including socially deviant behaviors.
Psychopaths are often described as callous, impulsive, manipulative, glib, egocentric, predatory, grandiose, and lacking empathy and emotional affect. Hare's study of what makes up a psychopathic personality has taken him down many avenues of scientific inquiry.
I've been working in this area for quite a long time, and for the first 10 or 15 years, I, like most other researchers and clinicians, was very frustrated by the fact that we didn't have some sort of standardized measure of this particular construct. People intuitively knew what they were talking about. If one read Herbie Cleckley's book, The Mask of Sanity, for example, you would have a pretty good idea about what a psychopath is, but how do you communicate that to somebody else? The problem is that we have never had a proper measuring tool for assessing this particular disorder.
In the early 1980s, Hare and his colleagues developed a psychometric test, now known as the Psychopathy Checklist Revised. Consisting of a 20-item rating scale, the checklist measures such things as glibness, superficial charm, cunning, manipulative behavior, lack of remorse or guilt, shallow affect, callousness, lack of empathy, impulsiveness.
What a bunch of lunkheads.